This real-side experience would open up in a desert scene. From a real-side symbology perspective, when we have a desert featuring, this tends to represent the unknown, especially where additionally might we find ourselves traversing a desert and perhaps leaving environments we are more familiar with, the towns and the cities behind. For indeed then, as the personal self seeks to establish its comfort zones, its patterns of behaviour and routines that present then consistency of experience, the personal self can surely be best described as a creature or creation of a habit. And on the earth, as things currently stand, what the controllers have set up and provided, marketed as convenience and greater ease and quality of living, will be these cities of technology, increasingly devoid of all that is natural, but what seems to although present as a better and more civilized way of life, as according to the controllers, and as agreed by the vast majority of the humans. In actuality, the surface simulated front, the presented lifestyles of convenience, will be as ideas, also bundled with the controller consciousness idea intentionality, a consciousness design inclination of control subjugation, that even as we all operate within a cause and effect simulator, where everyone can create and experience whatever they desire, the more controlling, ill-intended inclined beings have the consideration that they must enslave the simulation effecting consciousnesses of all others, that not only then is a simulated experience generated that suit the dark forces' desired positions, but where all others are subject to lesser positions of struggle and limitation. For indeed, to have others suffering and restricted is the thrill sensation of the more ill-intended, that even the destruction of others and entire planets, along with the species they harbour, is their form of entertainment, to alleviate the sheer boredom that creational restriction presents as a necessary restriction until we wake up to the real awareness of ourselves and recognize the isness true reality that the real awareness is a part of, through the comparison everything creational, all the restriction provides. As each awareness has its own consciousness engine room, affecting body vehicles, that the consciousness decided construct can be viewed through, we each are the architects of our own simulated experience, through the agreements, the ideas we consciousness install. We either create our own ideas through the body vehicle mechanics, thought or emotion, or agree to those as created by others. But generally, it is the ideas we don't realize we are installing that will affect circumstances that are not favorable to ourselves. For as I said, the controllers present the appealing, convenience-providing ideas, but every surface idea will additionally be weighted with ideas that are not surface one-dimensionally apparent, for intent is an idea also, and with the surface idea being connected with the consciousness that effects it, as you can't have one without the other, the projector is required for the movie, with the controller consciousness being a construct of control idea inclination, so these ideas are additionally agreed with, that in actuality the humans decide to experience then subjugation and domination at the hands of the darker forces, as they have extended permission to them through the ideas they have a consciousness implanted that facilitate this. Each individual, as the decider, lays out their movie sets and affords the roles that others can assume. Without the provided roles, without the agreement ideas that present these roles, then no other can step into these positions and operate in whatever capacity the parameters of the agreement role affords. For the controllers to have humanity effect circumstances where they are their dominators, so the dark forces must have the idea agreement that effect such, that make these dominator roles available, installed in human consciousness through generally, as I said, the marketed surface idea appeal fronts. Simply put, the controllers must have their slave species construct their own prisons where the dark forces are assigned roles as their masters. And these cities and lifestyles of convenience may look a certain way on the surface, but are in actuality destructive of the environments that support us all, and laced with the control intentionality ideas as they also will be, so humanity's overall experience is able to be progressively taken down a road of continued escalating limitation, subjugation, and as the controllers now desire to instigate, depopulation. So when we do find ourselves transitioning into desert-like settings on the real side, this can very well be construed as our deciding to break loose from the routines, the comforts of the personal self, the convenience as provided by the controllers, as we literally are leaving it all behind and walking into that which is deserted, is absent of the controller provided lifestyles, a risk-taking step into the unknown beyond the comfort affording ideas of the consciousness. But everything on the real side we are shown is subject to context, some features symbolic, others more literal, and in this real side experience, the desert would simply be the environment I found myself in. I was a part of as though an exploration team, and impressions revealed we were determining as to the fate which had in fact rendered the planet we were on as barren, devoid of all that is natural, for indeed the entire planet was a desert, absent of any form of life or body type. Using advanced handheld devices designed to home in on anything that was manufactured, creations by the hands of a sentient species that once inhabited the planet we were on, we would come across a mechanical container, semi-buried in the desert sand. As we activated the releasing mechanisms, the container would yield its contents, a series of smaller discs that when inserted into a device also within the container, a little like a small DVD player, we were presented with a video record of what had befallen the planet we were on, what had rendered it barren and lifeless. It became then very apparent we were on the planet Earth, as the one featuring predominantly on the video footage, the one who was chronicling the events that had occurred, was a human, a female in a uniform of some kind, and her location was indeed a secret science, bioengineering, Earth-based advanced facility. My view would switch, that rather than observing what had unfolded through the small screen provided with the device that was running the recording, a little like in the movies where an individual in the film may be recounting an event and then the audience are brought into the visual of it as though experiencing the memory of what the individual is sharing. So I would now be as though inserted into the experience as it unfolded, as though afforded a more immersive, virtual reality, three-dimensional view, more so than the real awareness, as a part of the true reality everything interfused through all consciousness as it is. So every idea that consciousness comprises of, be it past or present, idea-affecting events, are available to the real awareness, and the personal self can be shown anything, any idea-affecting circumstance that has ever taken place in the simulator. As in reality, only the body form mechanics process the ideas to effects in sequences of time and space frames. In actuality, every idea as they formulate as linear sequences of illusory time through the processing of the physical vehicle are present in the nowness of the everything reality that the real awareness is. That indeed I would be present now within an advanced underground facility on the planet Earth. The overall area of research and development was in regards to bioengineering, genetics, gene splicing, hybridization, and nanotechnology, etc. Generally, the dark forces will have their hand in anything that is or will be impacting humanity, for as they seek to maintain control of it, so they can't have any uncontrolled variables that may interfere with their agendas for where they desire the direction of overall human experience to take. And should that which they are not funding, backing, or orchestrating establish itself independently, and the nature of it could have a bearing on their plans if not regulated, they will be swift to either coerce, infiltrate, threaten, bribe those involved with extreme quantities of monies, and if that fails, completely destroy them and the projects they were developing, or just to take it all for themselves, if it indeed may prove as a valuable additional tool for their controlling agendas. For this advanced bioengineering lab, although kept a secret from the general human populace, was an independently created and financed operation, where sincere were the intentions of those involved that their work be for the betterment of the planet and all humanity. Naturally, the dark forces were aware of them, they were watching, but were allowing them to proceed with their efforts, and at a moment where what the scientists were doing may pose as a threat to the dark forces' control of humanity, so they may of course move in to take over or to destroy the project. The idea seemed that this group of self-funded scientists had acquired a certain technology that was the motivation for their operation, the reason they had set up the research facility in the first place. Evidently humans already boasting a high level of science and genetic knowledge, but as though some extra element had become available, that was the impetus of them setting up their complex of science facilities. And my view would now switch to a chamber within the complex, as contained there within a kind of enclosed liquid medium filled cubicle was a body form that wasn't human. The being, however, wasn't imprisoned, in actuality present by his own volition and agreement, for the Earth's environment, its atmosphere, was not supportive of a body form such as he possessed, and were he not protected within the cubicle, immersed in a glowing, constantly colour-fluctuating liquid that evidently represented more so the environment his body form was designed for as a product of, very likely he was the equivalent of a sea-based being. The curious liquid he was in was a recreation of the precise frequency-affecting simulation of the watery environments he lived in from whichever planet he hailed from. Absent of the liquid cubicle, and his body form would have expired within moments. As was revealed through my impressions, this being had reached out and made contact with these particular independent scientists, and as they provided the means by which he could operate safely on the Earth, according to the exact specifics of his watery medium he required, he then had provided them with an advanced form of bioengineering technologies, as clearly he represented rather an advanced species, where the development and utilizing of such technologies were a standard. But he rather wanted to be present in the facility, as opposed to just affording the technology details and the application of them from beyond the Earth. It wasn't made apparent how initial contact was established, or the process by which he was placed within the liquid containing a cubicle. No impressions would shed light on this detail. Really then, it wasn't vital for the personal self to know, only as to the overall idea that this view presented as. For the alien being would be mostly in a direct communication with a specific member of the team, the female who had chronicled what had taken place on the Earth. She would be in the position of the team's leader then, and it was through telepathy that communication with the being could be so, the humans lacking telepathic ability, but made possible through the alien being, as it and its species had developed their consciousness in such a decided way that effected were body forms of extreme intellect, technological know-how consequently, and various other abilities such as telepathy, etc. The alien being itself had a body type that was hard to define. It was as though constantly fluctuating in form, but evidently was designed for a liquid environment, as fin-like additions to its outer epidermis skin layer were apparent. Shape-shifting was among it and its species many developed abilities quite clearly. Its form would instantly respond to thought and alter accordingly, and on many occasions, where the female lead scientist was in the chamber and in telepathic communication with the being, so it would alter its form that it appeared human. As this was more pleasing to the scientist, she was more comfortable in the presence of the human form than exotic alien body types, and so the being would accommodate this. That this wouldn't present as an issue as their operation continued, the providing and application of the alien being's technology for the project the scientists had decided to utilize it for. As I said, advanced bioengineering technology of a kind that the human scientists wished to use in ways that would be human species beneficial. The exact specifics as to what they hoped to achieve was never made apparent, although what they were hoping to achieve, broadly speaking, was to make alterations to the very fabric of life on Earth seemingly. In reality then, through the provided alien tech, could they potentially terraform the planet Earth, desiring to as though rid the world's pollution issues, restore the forests, create more crops, and indeed enhance the insect life that pollinates and are responsible for maintaining the very foundation from which all food stems from, that the insects serve in this capacity but more efficiently. A bold and ambitious undertaking indeed, but in reality an interference with the natural environment. A natural environment, if left to its own devices and not meddled with, is designed to perfectly support the species that exist within it, and so regardless of their well-placed intentions, these scientists were in fact interfering with the very ideas that make up the affected Earth-simulated environment, to change what has been made available, that which supports life, to a version they think is better. For in one scene I did witness the results of some of their dabbling. They had produced a kind of snake, but one more mechanical, one comprising more of nanotech material, and for whatever purpose it was to serve, that would somehow improve life for humans when unleashed into the environments. The snake comprised of a black liquid metal, but was as though partially complete. A third of its body was absent, but with a slight adjustment with the scientist's handheld device, so the rest of what was its tail would formulate, but be of a white liquid metal coloration as opposed to the black that the rest of its body comprised of. Whatever its purpose, amidst the overall terraforming Earth for the better idea objective, it appeared to still be dangerous, in that it could administer a lethal poisoned bite through its liquid metal fangs, and the scientists had to hold it rather carefully as they proceeded to work on the snake. Perhaps designed to perform a certain function, but also equipped to bite should any body form interfere with whatever it was designed to do. The technology as supplied by the alien aquatic being was indeed such that many current body forms, insects, birds, etc., wouldn't necessarily be replaced, but these engineered creations that stemmed from the technology would work in conjunction with the already established life forms to either enhance the essential environmental actions the indigenous earth animals and insects performed, or to add an extra element to the environmental systems in place that, according to the scientists, would bring forth a greater and more enhanced version of the environment for the betterment of all humanity. There was one particular creation that would be among the new bioengineered nanotech-based creatures that would also serve in this forging of a new world that took the form of a very small scorpion-like insect. A created liquid metal nanotech insect that operated in a colony as though a swarm that would be unleashed and carry out whatever function they were designed for. And as I was afforded the view of another chamber of the facility, housed within would be the genetic material that had been utilized with the nanotech as supplied by the alien being for this very scorpion creature creation. For what was contained there would be many varieties of earth-based spiders, scorpions, etc., a number of which were allowed to just roam around the open chamber, others were contained. revealing then the reason for the form that the nanotech creation had ultimately taken, that of a kind of scorpion/spider, as this was the genetic material required in addition seemingly, a kind of splicing between Earth species genetics and the technology as supplied by the alien. It's uncertain if what would then transpire was deliberate on the part of the alien being, or if it was an unforeseen circumstance, that perhaps the human scientists were in error with their experiments and application of what was very advanced alien tech, even under the guidance of the alien being, but the scorpion-like nano creations were suddenly beyond the abilities of the scientists to control. All animal, insect species will have a certain consciousness program that they carry out and in relation to the functions they perform in regards to the natural environment. Only when the secondary personal self is established and through the free will creating of ideas will actions then tend to veer off from what is environmentally supporting. These creations were similar then to Earth-based insects and animals. They had a certain program installed, a function they would carry out, but as is generally the case where humans attempt to interfere with the simulator's natural environment design, the results may not necessarily be as they intended. And as I said, if the alien being knew this would occur, had insidiously included a little nanotech program the scientists didn't realize was present, or if it was an error on the part of the scientists themselves, regardless, the result was that these scorpion nanotech creatures now are carrying out a new function. Regardless, the result was these scorpion nanotech creatures now are carrying out a new function as motivated through the equivalent of a consciousness installed program imperative. They now were multiplying rapidly, the nanotech able to replicate the swarm that potentially there was no limit to how large in numbers the swarm could become. And instead of carrying out the function the scientists desired for this swarm, that which according to them would be Earth beneficial, instead the swarm of nano scorpions were as they were programmed to target anything and everything Earth-based that was natural, plant and animal life forms, and dismantle it all to as though its atomic level that no trace of the affected body form visually remained. The swarm began with all life forms within the facility, all the various specimens required for their genetic contribution to the cause, and then the scientists themselves. As the swarm could move at a lightning pace of velocity that nothing could outrun, outcrawl, or indeed outfly them, as the swarm had the ability to take to the skies as though on invisible wings. What became of the alien being contained within the cubicle wasn't revealed. Perhaps he had a means of extraction. His body form had all manner of capability, as I said. Very possibly, he even bilocated, teleported himself into the liquid-filled cubicle as provided for him in the first place, and this was then his means of removing himself from the hazardous situation it had now descended into. Very likely he would have a plan for escape if what had transpired with the nanotech swarm was a deliberate scheme on his part, for whatever reasons he would have for doing so. Perhaps in all likelihood then he was in actuality working with the dark forces, who are intent to install any idea agreement into human consciousness which will effect a depopulation event, and what was taking place here was as good a method as any. The controllers may wish to depopulate, but any idea in addition to the current human experience, as it currently is agreement effected to be, requires these additional idea agreements that effect then human experience into a more controlled circumstances or depopulation events. And this may explain why the dark forces were content to allow the scientists to continue, sincere as they may have been with their notions of making the world a better place, as the dark forces perhaps were in association with the alien being. He was their instrument of destruction. And as it seemed then, the dark forces were able to nestle the agreement idea into human consciousness, which allowed this situation to unfold. For indeed, all effects which impact an entire species must be agreement installed in the overall consciousness of that species, and this particular agreement would indeed present as a viable means of not only human depopulation, but complete genocide of the human species, and in actuality every body form on Earth, plant, insect, and animal. As now the swarm, having eradicated all life in the facility, now unleashed themselves onto the world, replicating rapidly, that allowed them to effect their life-erasing global devastation in a very short period of time. There was the expected chaos, mayhem, the streets of the world full of panicking humans, desperate to find a safe haven, as the realization of the swarm became very apparent. But so swift was the eradication of all life, there really was little time to even attempt to find a safe haven, and even were any human able to hunker down in where they thought the nano swarm couldn't reach, through the programming of the swarm and the abilities they possessed, so no form of life, human or otherwise, could evade them. The swarm had the ability to track any Earth-based life forms and make whatever adjustments were necessary to their forms to reach them. They were comprising of a liquid, nano-based metal, as I said, their base form scorpion-like, but they were not resigned to it, so anywhere of the skies, the surface, or even beneath it wasn't beyond their ability to access. The controllers allowing this to transpire, serving their depopulation agenda very nicely. If Earth-based themselves, very likely they would have evacuated the planet. Maybe some of the lesser Dark Force Earth-based minions left to be eradicated with the rest of humanity, and so this would be what was revealed, as chronicled by the female lead scientist in the recording, up until it was no longer feasible for her to do so, when the swarm began to eliminate her and her team. And indeed, all that would remain of humanity would be their abandoned buildings, infrastructure and cities. All life was erased, and amidst the desolation would be the container with this recording, left in a world that had become overall a desert, as everything natural had been eradicated. The last testament of the human scientist chronicling the world's end, due to their association with very likely a Dark Force affiliated alien being and the technology he had provided. Within human overall consciousness will be all the agreement ideas that have been installed, the vast majority of which have been Dark Force implanted, as effected as overall human experience is that which the Dark Forces desire to be, humanity's current controlled overall experience. But as the dark forces move into their current desires for depopulation, these ideas may well become human consciousness installed, but if they become as overall human experience depends on if they jostle to the forefront of human consciousness agreements and are maintained long enough to be physical level actualized. For in reality, every agreement is in effect now, but through the decided design of a consciousness, as it affects the physical level as experienced through the human body forms, so the idea causes effect gradually to their culmination. All idea agreements are as movies, complete in reality, but through the mechanics of the body forms. So awareness must sit through the already completed movie to its end. That eventually experienced is the effects of the idea that set the movie in motion. But should a different agreement become a consciousness prominent, the movie is exchanged for another, and humanity sits through the rollout to an alternative overall effect. On the real side, then, we always are shown potentialities of the forerunning consciousness agreements that are jostling for prominence with individuals or entire species, all agreements in effect now, but which becomes as a physical level manifest, are those that occupy the prominent forefront position in a consciousness, and are maintained there long enough that the effect, the movie's end, is experienced. This real side experience, future view so-called event, would be then one of these potentialities, swimming amidst all the other possibilities I have shared. And in the final analysis, humanity decides its overall experience according to the agreements it holds to most stringently.